Hey guys, it's Steve. Welcome to Things Police See Firsthand Accounts. This is episode number 27. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for all the continued support. If you want to contact me about being on the show, or if you want to reach out to the show and ask me any questions, the way to do that is thingspolicec@gmail.com. In this episode, I have Sean Thompson from the San Francisco Police Department. Sean has some crazy stories. Like, one of them was just nuts. Very graphic, but very interesting. Just warn you of that. He goes into just a crazy suicide attempt at a national park, and he talks about responding to an active shooter event. So, really interesting stuff. Very intense. Super happy that Sean came on and was willing to share his stories. He is also involved actually in his own two podcasts, Good Bad 2, the sequel, and Good Bad 2, No Holds Barred. The first one, Good Bad 2, the sequel, is they kind of review cringy movies, and it's actually a great idea for a podcast. You should go check that out. And also Good Bad 2, No Holds Barred is similar theme, except they go into old kind of cheesy wrestling. So two great podcasts right there to go check out. They're available on iTunes. So without any further ado, here is my interview with Sean Thompson.
This is Things Police See, First-Hand Accounts, with your host, Steve Gold.
Sean Thompson, San Francisco Police Department. Thank you for coming on the podcast, my man.
Of course. How you doing today?
I'm doing good, brother. So I'm in sunny California as well, just a little further south than you. You guys, I think stay a little more chilly than us, right?
Yeah, I think it's in the. I think it was high 30s this morning when I got up.
Oh wow,
So,
that's
yeah.
That's like northeast cold. Hey, dude, I got to tell you, growing up, Dirty Harry was like one of my favorite movies. That's like my only exposure to San Francisco PD, and man, he was a great rep for you guys. Now, do you guys have the stars? Like, could you throw it into a cabinet past your captain's head if you wanted to quit?
Oh man, maybe I could. I've never even thought of it. We still use it. We still use this. The 7-point stars?
That's awesome. I love that. It's so traditional.
Yeah, it's a cool classic kind of look.
That those movies are, if you go back and revisit them, they're so good, but they're so ridiculous. Especially if, don't even attempt to apply them to today's climate. But like I can't. This isn't like word for word. But I'll just paraphrase. But at one point, have you seen the movies?
It's been a long time.
Yeah. At one point, he's talking to his captain or his lieutenant or something, and he's like, "Harry, you're going to cost us $1 million again." And he's like, "Well, when I see a pervert running around Chinatown with his pants down, I shoot the son of a bitch." Like, man, you just shot him just for that. That's amazing.
Yeah, times have definitely changed from.
Yeah, you definitely can't do that in San Francisco now.
Yeah, no,
not at all. All right, brother. Let's get into it. Can you tell us about the first hot call that you responded to? Just the first call that really got your adrenaline going.
So the first. Kind of a two-part. The first hot call that I had was actually, believe it or not, first phase FTO, first day, right out of lineup. We broke from lineup.
Excellent.
I was on day shift for first phase FTO in a district called Northern District. So we have 10 different districts in the city. So we're in lineup. Call comes out for hot prowl 459, so hot prowl burglary in progress. So FTO and I go out and make entry. Suspect's gone, but first call, first day, gun out. It's like 5:45, 6 o'clock in the morning. It's still dark. Doing a building search. Looking for suspect, meet with the victim. She's hysterical.
It's got to be surreal for you, first day.
Yeah, it's. I prepared. I feel like I prepared pretty well for the job. I went through 2 academies. I put myself through an academy before I got picked up with San Francisco.
Holy cow! So is I don't know how California academies work really, but obviously they're not all equivalent. You can't like just
No. So my
brutal.
my first one was 20 weeks, which is I believe the minimum. And then San Francisco was 36.
36-week academy.
Yeah.
Oh my god! I'm sorry to take a branch off the story here, but
That's
that's
all right.
insane.
Yeah, it's there's a lot. So
Wow.
it was a process for me getting in the job, so I was felt pretty prepared, but it's like you said, it's your first call, and it's it's not moving a homeless guy or a traffic stop or some argument over a parking stall, but it's meet with the victim. She's upset. There's a broken door. She said she was in her room. She heard noise in the roommate's room. Roommate's out of town. And then her door opened.
This is an apartment complex?
Yeah, it's like an apartment complex. So they're kind of funky in the city. There's some that are like your typical, apartment building, kind of like Seinfeld, where you go inside, hallways, doors on either side. And then they have ones that are they're like stacked units. And so it's like one unit on a floor. And then you go up the stairs, and a lot of the buildings in San Francisco have like tradesmen's doors. So they have like a little side alley that's covered that they use for like putting out the garbage, and you can get access to the garage and backyards. But it's like a gate at the curb.
Okay.
So it's kind of like a back door. So she's in her room, door opens, and she sees a silhouette in the doorway, and she freaks out. Whoever it was ends up bolting. When we're doing a search and going through rooms, seeing if anything's missing, I look at the bed, her roommate's bed, and there's a rusty Sawzall blade laying on the bed, and I look at it, and I look at her, and I go, "This isn't yours, correct?" And she freaked out. She didn't even see that before.
Weird.
Yeah, so it's kind of crazy. Your first call going a super personal call for someone like that. She was terrified, and it's very understandable. So I don't think we didn't end up getting the guy. I think there was a couple things missing, but that was pretty intense for a first call. But I would say my first real, I would say, adrenaline rush was my second phase FTO. And again, it was the first day. And for second phase, I was housing. So in our projects, we have housing units and teams that just work in the projects. And they typically aren't FTOs, but I got lucky enough to get housing for my second phase. And
so
our
housing something you would want then?
Yeah, for me. So there's a lot of stuff I want to learn in the job. There's a ton of stuff, as you know, to learn, and patrol's a huge aspect. But there's, especially in the big city, there's a lot of avenues you can branch off. And
I'm sure.
And getting to work in the projects, learn some of the major players. Especially in that district, you kind of get a little bit of everything. There's, the marina, which is super nice, and you get a little bit of downtown, and then you have the projects. So it's a good mix. We're driving through the projects, and FTO and his partners see somebody that they are familiar with somebody that they're not. And the other guy was hooded up. So they're trying to figure out who he is. They know the guy who's with him is known to carry guns. So they kind of warn me. They go, "Hey, as soon as we get out of the car, he's going to take off." So they one of them makes a noise to kind of see if they'll look over and get a look at the guy with the hood up. And as soon as he looks and our doors open, he bolts. So we take off. FTO and I chase him through the park, turns a corner onto a street, and the street's lined with the projects on that side. All the doors are like along the street. And he runs about halfway down the block, and he turns to go into one of the units. And as he turns, he reaches, I can remember it like it was yesterday, he reaches for the door handle with his right hand, and he reaches for his waistband with his left. And as soon as I saw that, I was right along the curb line, so I ducked over behind a car and drew my firearm, and he ended up ducking into the house. But they have some cool technology there and surveillance cameras, and we were able to identify him. We locked down the projects and did some searches. And
now when he runs in there, and you had great instincts, especially as a young officer on the job. You take cover, you draw your weapon. He runs in. You don't run in right after, right?
No. So he ran in, and turned out it was like his sister's house, and he ran in, and door shut. After the door had shut, we ran up, and because I think it kind of caught us both. We had my FTO and I obviously had a discussion about it afterwards, and we both thought the same thing, that if the door was locked, that whatever he was reaching for, that was his next option. So we get to the door, and the door ends up being like barricaded. So we're pounding on the door, and it takes a good 30, 45 seconds for somebody to open the door. And then from there, we continued to set up a perimeter and did what we had to do. I think we ended up looking, he ran out the back door, went to another family member's unit in that complex. There's a bunch of them that live in that complex. And we ended up finding him, I think, in his grandma's house.
Poor grandma. They're always going to grandma's.
Yep. Grandma, mom.
Dude, that is intense, man. Especially so new on the job. Is it when he went through the door? Was there any windows or any other entry points, or was it just the door?
There's a window, I believe, in the front, and then I think there were stairs going upstairs, and then the back door. So yeah, I think he handed off whatever he had or stashed it. It took a while for us to be able to search that unit. We didn't end up finding anything in there, but I think he ran in. Sister claimed she didn't know who the guy was and know what was going on, but that's usually how that process goes.
Yeah, you've got to be pretty jacked up when you're doing that search. After knowing there's a good probability he could be in there hiding somewhere with the gun. I mean, tons of cops get shot like that. People hiding, Oh yeah, it probably saw on the news. It was a few years before that. They had the 4 officers in Oakland. They got killed. A couple of them shot. Suspect was hiding in a closet with a AK-47 and shot through the wall and killed a couple of them. So yeah, it's one of those things that in the job that you prepare as much as you can, but especially when you're doing a building search, we do a lot of training with like our tactical team. And it's one of those things you just can't really prepare for, I guess. Like when you got to search, when you're the first man in, it's kind of like you can use the best tactics and you're smart about it and you don't rush in, but if someone's hiding and they want to get you, they have the upper hand, and it's kind of whatever happens. Yeah, you can't. I mean, there's nothing you can really do if someone's willing to swap their life for you. That's yikes, brother. You mentioned technology to help track this guy. What do you mean by that?
So the housing units have, or all the housing properties, most of them in the city have like surveillance cameras. So the housing officers, have access to the cameras. Some of them have real-time access. so they can access it from phones, and they can rewind footage, and see where the person went.
Oh, that's pretty great. And they were pretty open to that, pretty cooperative.
No, well, the officers have it on their like work phones. So we have like department phones. So they have.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just imagining. Because I do fraud investigation now for insurance companies. So we're always asking, can we have access to that? Here's a release. Can we have access to that? You guys have that. The cops have access to that.
Yes, some of them. Like, you have to be in special units. You probably have to go through special training, but it's through it. It might have changed since then, but there's like a security company that runs all the cameras in the projects, and I believe they had given the access to them through like an app or some kind of system. So they have ways of checking it like real time.
Oh, dude, that's pretty BA. That's amazing. Well, I wouldn't expect any less from San Francisco. You guys are the tech giants, right?
You'd think. I mean, we got some stuff like that's really good, and then the computer systems in our cars and like our report writing, we still print out reports and submit paper reports, and
wow.
It's
pretty
weird.
interesting.
Yeah, some stuff is up with the times and stuff. So some stuff is a little bit far back, but
yeah, it's hard with huge agencies like that. They just it just takes forever sometimes to unless someone's really pushing it. I remember like New York City had they had revolvers for like a long time. It took forever to get everybody to automatics because there's just 30,000 cops. Just the way it is. You guys it's like steering a battleship.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, brother. You got to have a good one for this. A strange or bizarre call.
Yeah. So we had a call. This was more recent. The district I'm in now. So for us, just a little backstory. For us, when you do training, you do your field training at one station. You go to a third station for your probationary period. And then you go to a second station for probation, and a third station for your permanent station. So they move you around the city, get used to different parts. So I'm at my permanent station out in the Richmond district, which is the Ocean Beach, and It's like Robin Williams had a house out there, so it's Golden Gate Park. It's a quieter part of the city. We got a call. What's that?
High rent, even for San Francisco?
Exactly. Yeah. So we got a call to assist another agency, and we have a lot of like U.S. Park Police territory in that area. So we work hand in hand with those guys pretty often. And we get a call to assist them with a person attempting to commit suicide. So they were looking they don't have like hostage negotiators. And it takes a while for us to get our hostage negotiation team set up. So a lot of our officers are, they call CIT trained. So for like critical incidents. So the person I was working with, officer I was working with, that day we go out and we're first to respond, and it's on in a park along the cliff, along the coastline. Subjects on Park Police said it was like a 300 or 400 foot cliff, like a sheer cliff, overlooking the Golden Gate. So we get there, and there's a couple of U.S. Park Police officers, and subject, not suspect, it's not a crime, but he's covered in blood, and he's holding what's like a Rambo knife, and trying to talk him back from the ledge, come talk to us. And he's calm, he's not violent, he's pretty content with the decision he made.
And is he like shirtless, covered in blood?
No, he's clothed, covered in blood. So what happened was he found this spot kind of off a trail, and his idea was to slit his wrists and just bleed out, looking out at the Golden Gate Bridge.
Okay.
So he had taken this knife, and he was a medic. Prior, he was a medic in another part of the country, and we ended up being there for about 4 or 5 hours talking to him. But he described to us and told us how tough it was for him to cut his wrists. So he cut them, lengthwise, vertically, and
that's the way to really do it, right? Because you can't. That really damages your veins. They can't close.
Yeah, they can't stitch him up to get that long vertical cut. And he said it took him three cuts
Ugh.
to really. Yeah,
Ugh.
I had the same reaction. It was tough. He said it took him 3. So while we're talking to him, he's squeezing his forearms. He's kind of rubbing his arms. Just talking to him, and hey, what are you doing?
Is he trying to bleed out when he's talking to you, or is he just nervously squeezing himself?
Yeah, so he's not nervous at all. He's cool. He's calm. He's having just regular conversation with us. But he told us he was trying to bleed out, so he didn't cut quite deep enough, and the wounds, the blood had started to coagulate and close up the wound. So he's trying to squeeze the blood out.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So we're
so nasty.
We're talking to him. We're like, hey man, just come, we don't want you to fall and we don't want you to jump. And he goes, oh, I'm not going to jump. He's like, I'm too scared to jump. He goes, but maybe if I bleed out, I'll just fall. So
I would have been like, maybe you could just jump with those bloody arms. Get them away from me.
So he's doing this, and he's squeezing his arms, and again, we're there for a few hours and talking to him, and every once in a while he'll pick at his wrist and he'll flick. So we asked him what he's doing. He said he was picking out blood clots.
Oh man.
And on this a couple instances, he winces, and he goes, oh man, that one hurt, and he lifts up his arm. And he actually sticks his fingers inside of his arm and starts pulling at his veins.
Oh my gosh. Oh, dude,
yeah.
This is brutal.
Yeah, he almost pulls them out.
Whoa.
And he's narrating the pain as he's tugging on his arteries. Yeah.
Wow.
So we sit there with him and talk to him. We get our hostage negotiation team out there. We don't carry tasers. I had my, what we call an ERIW. It's our extended range impact weapon, our less lethal shotguns. I had that with me just in case. And what we ended up doing is some friends made a recording for him saying that they missed him and wanted to talk to him. And
oh, really? Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah. So he was a reported missing person from another district in the city earlier that day. And we all kind of put this together during the incident that he was a missing person, that his family was looking for him.
Oh, how sad. Oof.
Yeah. So some friends came out, and we had this recording for him, but it was hard to hear. So we got him to take about 10 steps in to listen to the recording. And at that time, we had U.S. Park Police. I think two officers tased him at the same time. And he dropped, and we were able to get him into custody.
Oof. I would have been like, yeah, the Parks Police, you guys be the main hands-on guys. This is your jurisdiction.
So yeah, they were, and that was one of the back and forth that some of our staff there had with them, was like, hey, this isn't our jurisdiction, and it's not a crime. So if you guys got to do something, you guys go hands on. We're here to support you, and we were there to talk to them because of the the extra training we have.
Right.
So it worked out, but it was I actually took the next day off after that.
Oh. Yeah, I don't blame you.
Yeah, not because it's not one of those that like sticks with you and gives you nightmares or anything, but it was like it was towards the end of the week, and being there for as long as we were and seeing that, I was like, man, I'm just gonna start my weekend early, take a day off.
I don't blame you, man. That is hairy. Whew. Gross. Pulling on his veins like that. What? And was he on drugs? Was he drunk, or what? Was he just depressed?
He was just depressed. It was an interesting situation. So, like I had said, he was a prior medic, another part of the country, and one of the park police had a friend who also worked for that same agency. So he had stepped away from the situation and called his buddy, and turns out his buddy knew this guy. So the park police officer came back and was like, hey man, I just talked to so-and-so. He said, you're a really good guy. He said, you're a good cook, super nice. So, and that kind of helped. As soon as he said that, the guy kind of teared up a little bit, and his demeanor changed a little bit. So it's an interesting,
Did you have any follow-up with this guy? Is he okay, or do you know what happened at all?
I don't, because the U.S. Park Police take over at that point.
Right. I'm sure you were more than happy to get the hell out of there. I would have been. See ya.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those. Yeah, it's like like you get into the job for. I mean, there's the obvious. You get to chase people and do cool stuff, but it's stuff like this that I like to tell people that they know. People know things happen, but they don't really know. Like, they see it on TV, they see it in the movies, but that's not real.
Yeah, it's really weird, like, because you do have this image of, like, all right, I'm going to deal with bad guys, I'm going to chase them, I'm going to, maybe pull over, get in some chases and stuff like that. But then when you go to a call like you just went to, or like for me, the equivalent, the only thing I would have would be like a really bad wreck where you're the first one there and it's just the two of you and someone like really, really mangled. It's like, whoa, like that whole medical side of it always hit me sideways. I always felt like I wasn't prepared for it.
Yeah, it's one of those I feel like you can't really prepare for. Even with social media and the news and there's stuff, movies, everything's more realistic, but it's still, I almost think that it hurts the reality of it, because people get so used to seeing these things on TV shows and movies, but then you see the real life consequences of it and how it affects people, and it's not really something you can fully prepare for. You just kind of have to learn ways to cope with it.
Absolutely. Oof. Let me ask you about the parks police, because where I worked, we had a big part of our jurisdiction was national parks. Yeah. And they were like park rangers. They had the Smokies, and is that different than park? Is park police, is that like a state thing, or was that a federal park?
So we have a couple. So like in Golden Gate Park, we have like rangers, park rangers.
Like national?
I think they're local.
Okay.
Because like the first academy we went to up here, up north, they also train park rangers. So for all the, and they might be national parks. I'll be honest, I'm not too familiar with what those rangers do. The ones we normally work with are U.S. Park Police. And so they like, the area is called like the Presidio, and it's old like military housing and bases. So I guess it would be federal.
Huh. There's so many different sects of that stuff. It's like, it's really kind of interesting. It's bizarre.
And it's hard for us sometimes knowing like Ocean Beach, the beach itself is park police territory, but like we have the parking lot. So jurisdictionally, sometimes there's a back and forth on, whose jurisdiction a call is.
That's interesting. Yeah.
So we do a lot of, like you probably know, there's a lot of auto burglaries in San Francisco.
Right.
And that district in that area, we get a lot of them. And that's a lot of the spots where they hit normally kind of borders on our territory and park police. So, we'll be, when I'm doing like a plainclothes operation, we'll be watching a parking lot that might be U.S. Park Police. And when something happens, it's kind of we might grab somebody, but then it's, okay, do we write it? Does Park Police take it? So it's kind of a jurisdictional battle sometimes.
Yeah, that's weird. It's different everywhere too. Like where I worked, we used to swear in the federal park rangers. They're law enforcement. They're armed and badges and all that. They'd get sworn in to have special police powers when they left the park property, because the park kind of went in and out of public roads.
Yeah.
Which made it really weird because, like, one night I went on Route 6 was a main highway that went through town, and there was a park ranger out there, had someone pulled over, and he's just searching the car and had everybody out of the car. And I ended up talking to him later, and I said, because on federal property, when you're exercising your enforcement powers as a federal park ranger, you can take people out of the car for no reason. You can just pull them over and go get out and search their car. They could do that on federal land. But now he's on Massachusetts property. And I was trying to tell him, I'm like, you're kind of switching your hats here, because you pulled him over out here and you're acting as a special police officer for the state of Massachusetts. We're not allowed to do that. So I go, I don't know, but I don't think you can just pull people over on the state highway and search them. I think you should save that for the park and not do that out here. And he was like, oh, yeah. I never thought about that. I said, yeah, I don't know, really. Not like you're going to get in trouble, but it seems... I wish I could do that, but we're not allowed to.
Yeah. It seems like it's getting harder and harder to do some of this stuff.
Oh, yeah, it absolutely is. All right, brother. Can you tell us, tell the audience about the most intense, terrifying call, if you will?
Yeah, so this was a big national thing. We responded to in June of 2017, was the active shooter at the UPS facility in San Francisco.
Right.
So I was on probation at the time and was backing up. Me and the guy I was working with were backing up an officer on an injury accident. And I always had different radio channels on. So in our city, we have, because it's so big, we have a couple dozen radio channels, and different stations, districts share channels. It's kind of hard to get information out to the whole city. So like if I have something big, I'll have our dispatch put it out. We call it putting it out on an all. So they'll dispatch it over every channel.
Okay.
So suspect car information, or weapon information, stuff like that. So I have my radio on a different channel, and I hear this call of an active shooter, and I look at my partner for the day, and I go, hey man, let's go. And he's like, what's going on? I go, dude, there's an active shooter in the Mission. Let's go. And he's kind of hesitant, because it's, halfway across the city, and it's kind of, they're not super cool about you leaving your area unless it's necessary. We have certain codes. It's like, if they call a certain code, like an officer down, everybody in the entire city goes. So, but they hadn't called it yet. And as soon as I heard someone on that channel say, hey, we need more people, I came up, asked the sergeant, was like, hey, do we got permission to go? So we went out there and got on scene, and it was still active when we got there. And I still remember the thing that made it the most intense was knowing that it was an active shooter situation. It was a little bit of a drive there for us, but everything starts going through your head of possible scenarios.
A lot of time to think on the way there.
Yeah, which is good and bad. The negative, and I talk to friends, and I who are in the business, talk to them about it, and was like, I reached this moment a little bit later on, but I came to this point mentally where you just kind of accept that if this is the last thing I do, then this is the last thing I do. Like, if this is my last call I ever go to, then, this is what it was. This is what I was supposed to do.
That's like getting in that mental space it's insane, because it's like most people work 9 to 5, 40 hours a week, and they never get jacked up. Adrenaline never rises, and you're working. It's a normal job. It's not normal to slap on a bulletproof vest, number one, and then you're going to a call and you're like, well, this might be it for me.
Yeah. And it's a friend of mine described it like you go in and like our mentality is we always win. Like, I'm always going home. At the end of the day, I'm going home, my partner's going home, we win. But it's one of those situations that it's a huge, you have no control over where it's at, who's there, how many weapons. If it's an ambush situation, like, we have zero control over that situation. So I remember driving, or I was passenger, we're driving there, and I think my mother-in-law was at our house, and I just texted her. I said, I can't go into it, but do me a favor and call my fiance at the time, but call my wife and let her know that I'll call her when everything's done and I'm okay. And she's like, what's going on? I'm like, just, I'll call you guys when I can. So we get there and we run up, and I remember there was a body in the intersection. One of the guys who had been killed in the intersection. We had a spot set up where they were like a checkpoint where they were checking officers in as we got there. So we ran in.
Is this like an enclosed UPS facility?
Yeah. So the UPS facility here is like an entire city block.
Oh, wow.
And it goes underground, and it's like 4 or 5 stories tall. So it's a massive facility. So we meet up, and one of the tactical lieutenants, I think he was off duty, but he was there, and he just runs up and he goes, "Hey, we need people inside." So, you just go. So I remember just running inside, and they needed to get their tactical team in. Tactical team in.
For you guys, you're all on the same frequency, radio wise, going in. How many cops are already in there? They just in there in teams of 2 and 3, or is there full TAC teams in there? Or
so at that point, in retrospect, at that point, the shooter had already killed himself, but it wasn't known to everybody, and it was still considered active scene, because no one knew if there was more shooters. No one had the story yet. So there was a couple teams of officers inside, the first officers who got there, who contacted the suspect, and our tactical team was still, luckily it was a couple blocks from where our tactical team is. But they were still assembling everything to make entry, and they had to get a couple of teams together because it's such a large building.
Yeah.
So
I mean, these active shooters have really become the responsibility of the guys on patrol. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, it went from the I mean, the Columbine was the big,
Right.
I think the big turning point of, instead of sitting and waiting, it's you get there, and first man there is first man in. It's just something that you gotta prepare for with the job. So we ran in, and it was me and another guy, and we set up on an area that they wanted us to keep our eyes on, while the tactical team was assembling to do their building search. So we were basically holding a position, and it was on the main floor, but it was like a package chute that went to like a basement, and it was like basically a slide, but you could see down below. So it was one of those where you're kind of open and exposed, not knowing if there's anybody under there, anyone downstairs. And that was the point where it just kind of hits home, and you're like, this is what we do. Like, this is what we get into this job for.
Yeah.
And you're standing there. I'm holding that door for, I don't know, 3 hours. Your gun out, gun ready for
shoulders on fire.
Oh yeah, it's awful. I mean, you bring it into your chest to rest, but you're still on point. And it's just an intense situation.
That's a long time, man, just to be ready, like coiled and ready to strike for 3 hours.
Yeah,
that's exhausting.
Yeah, so he ended up, after a couple hours, we got the clear that it's no longer active, but 3 people were killed, 2 were injured. The guy just came in, was a employee, and just started singling out coworkers. And
man, the UPS, they went through some stuff, man. They've had some active shooters, just like the Postal Service now.
Yeah, I feel for them, man. I have some friends that work for UPS, and that's just one of those situations that, like, we prepare as much as you can. I've known officers that have been shot and that have come, none, personally, thankfully, that have been killed. But we had one officer that I know, buddies with, that got shot in the head, actually. Full recovery, and he's back at work.
Wow.
But we prepare for it, and we see things that most don't. So, you get kind of used to that stuff a little bit. But like I said before, the general public's it's not something that they're, conditioned to deal with. So, really feel for the victims and their families.
Yeah, absolutely. And tell me you called or texted your wife immediately after this de-escalated.
Oh yeah, as soon as they cleared us from inside, we went out to hold outside perimeter while coroner came in, and they did all their stuff. And as soon as I was able to get to my phone safely, it was texted her mom and another friend of mine, like a mentor of mine, and text them. I was like, hey, sure you're seeing this on the news. We're good. I'm okay. Scene isn't active anymore. And, told them I'd give them an update as soon as we got cleared.
I mean, she must have been, so worried. That's a lot of times people don't think about that, but the spouse is at home watching it on the news, hearing it on the radio, knowing you're there. That's stressful for them too.
Yeah, I got really lucky. My wife is amazing. Her grandfather actually retired from San Francisco. Her mom was a correctional officer. Her grandmother was in the military. My wife was in the ROTC, so she gets it. But it's still one of those. She's works for animal control for a local sheriff's department, So she knows the job, and she understands the schedule and the risks that go along with it. But yeah, I couldn't imagine being in her position, having to just sit and wonder and wait to hear that everything's okay.
Yeah, that's an intense one, brother.
Yeah.
So,
life in the big city.
Yeah, man. I mean, comes at you fast there. How long have you been on the job now?
So I'll be on the streets for 3 years coming up in a couple weeks. So not that long.
So what do you think? Do you think stay in patrol, take a sergeant's test when you can, or what are your interests? Investigations, or?
That's the cool thing about the big city is, like, I knew getting into the job, I knew I wanted to do narcotics. Unfortunately, as you know, California, pretty much everything's decriminalized. Narcotics is not much of a.
They're going to eliminate the narcotics divisions.
Yeah,
they're not needed.
I still like doing it when I can. If we can do spotting and spot, hand to hands and take guys on for sales. It's still fun for me. I've been fortunate enough to work into some. I feel like my work ethic has gotten me into some opportunities, and I've simultaneously fallen into a couple places with some good opportunities, and worked my way onto a plainclothes team. So prior to this injury, for about a year, was working plainclothes.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah, it's great. Doing the primary focus for us is auto burglaries, and which is plenty of them in the city, but it's kind of a hard detail, but it's fun. Just learning how to spot suspect cars, how to follow, learning how and when and where to try to block cars in and take guys down who just committed a burglary, how to build cases, write search warrants, execute search warrants, tracker warrants, stuff like that. So that's cool. Something I've been. Yeah, it's fun.
That sounds like fun. My neighbor is a narco guy for the county here. And he's got the big beard, and he's just wears whatever the hell he wants to work. And I was chatting with him recently, and he's like, well, I've been on the job a while now. He's probably been on 20, 25 years. He's like, I'm looking at, maybe, promoting and going to patrol for the end. I'm like, oh, you're going to go to patrol after what you've been doing? That's terrible. You're going to have to shave your big, awesome beard and wear a uniform. And I don't know. Plainclothes just seems too comfortable to me. I'd wear stretchy pants the whole time. I'd be like in a wheelchair from my weight.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I mean, it's hard. It's getting harder for us to do it. Staffing's getting tight, and I think everywhere around the country, not as many people are wanting to get into the job. So
yeah, it's kind of having a slowdown. It was like my dad became a cop in the 70s, and it was just like that. They just couldn't. He needed health care. He needed to take care of his family, and he had been in the Navy, and the chief of police of the town he was living in was basically like, hey, I knew your dad. Would you want to be a cop? And he's like, I guess. No one wanted to do the job in the 70s, and it's kind of going back that way.
Yeah, it's tough. I also do, I help out training some of the recruit classes. I do, we call them in the business the red man testing. I'm sure you guys did that.
Oh, yeah.
You're Massachusetts, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm sure you guys did that there also. And so I've been able to do that. And
do you wear the suit?
Yeah.
Dude,
yeah,
that's hardcore, man. The guy that was in our academy the first time I ever saw it was a trooper, and he wore that suit through a bunch of classes, and he was seriously about to pass out. The guy was jacked, but he was just exhausted, just wrestling with cop after cop after cop. It was intense. Yeah,
it's awesome. I love doing it. it's no joke, like you said, workout wise. We usually get 3 or 4 of us to do it, so it breaks it up a little bit, but it's a good workout. But watching the classes kind of dwindle down to where like we're getting half classes now instead of full. So it's getting tough.
Yeah, it was like that for I worked for LAPD backgrounds for 2 years, and I used to call up to you guys and then to Seattle and all the big coastal cities all the way up, and all the background investigators said the same thing. Like, yeah, we just can't. The ones we're getting we don't want, and we can't get the ones we want. Not applying. They're getting higher paying jobs elsewhere with less risk and more appreciation. Yep.
It's turning more into more like you had to want the job. We're not firefighters.
Nobody likes you.
Yeah, exactly.
Believe me and my dad had that. He told me that so many times. He's like, "Why aren't you being a firefighter?"
Yeah, I've had a couple firefighters in the city try to convince me to jump over and make the transition, but I don't know. Just something about doing what we do. It's addicting.
Yeah, no, it sounds like you work for a big city, tons of opportunities, tons of good calls to go on. Do you have any advice for these new guys coming on the job?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll try to keep it a little bit on the slimmer side on the advice, because there's a lot. I had just helped a buddy of mine get through the academy and helped him out with whatever I could. I would say in the beginning phases, if you want to get into the job, to really research the job itself and understand what the job entails, but do a lot of research on the agency you want to work for. Learn the crime areas, what kind of crimes are prevalent in the area. Do ride-alongs. I think ride-alongs are invaluable. I really wish they did ride-alongs during the academy, to be able to use or see how some of the skills you were learning in the academy, how some of those things were put to use.
Yeah, good idea.
But I would say start working out, exercise. Most of these academies are intense paramilitary academies. There's nothing worse than they always say, like, just fly under the radar. You don't necessarily want to be the top person, but you for sure don't want to be the last person. You don't want to be the one falling behind on runs. You don't want to be the person that causes other people to get dropped.
Right.
One of the big ones I would say is have talks with family, significant others. What worked for me might not work for everybody, but I know a lot of people, they kind of keep these things, what they see, what they do, they keep it to themselves, they keep it at work. For me and my wife, I share a lot of it. And if there's stuff she doesn't want to know, then I don't tell her. If there's stuff that I think she shouldn't know, then I'm hesitant and won't tell her. But for the most part, I'm very open about what's going on. That way, if I have a bad day, she understands that it's not just, hey, he's being an a-hole today, know? Because that's one of the big ones. Like they say that, divorce is big in this business, and substance abuse, stuff like that. For me, I think open communication is the biggest way to combat that. And then having a life outside of work.
Right.
Have that go to relieve stress, to shut your brain off, to be able to turn it off and to not be a cop.
Yeah, a lot of guys say that. They say, just if you have some childhood friends that aren't cops, make sure you keep them.
Yeah, that's been it's kind of tough. I would say that to people too, is be prepared. The unfortunate part is you will probably lose some people in your life. I know I have, from people who don't want to talk to me anymore because I'm a cop.
Really?
And
wow.
Yeah, there's especially like the political climate is kind of intense right now, and a lot of things that we do are extremely scrutinized. And in my opinion, it's something that a lot of people don't understand.
Right.
And it's hard to explain to people why we do the things we do and why we're trained the way we are. And some people just don't want to hear it. And it's unfortunate. But I guess if that's the reason that they don't want to talk to you, then, they're probably not a friend anyway.
Yeah, hell with them.
Yeah. So I think those would be my biggest pieces of advice.
Great advice, man. It's a hell of a city you work for there, man. I feel like you're the kind of guy I can have on again. Like, I feel like we could do a check-in and you're going to have more crazy vein-pulling stuff happening.
Oh, man, I would love to. I have I definitely have other interesting stories. Anytime you want to have me back on, I'd love it.
No, absolutely, man. I really appreciate you coming on, Sean.
Yeah, no worries.
All right, brother. Take care.
You too.
Hey, guys. I hope you enjoyed the interview. I know I did. As squeamish as I may have become at one point, it was a hell of an interview, and I'm thankful that he was able to come on. I just want to say, if you haven't rated or reviewed the podcast, I would ask you to go to iTunes and do that for me. It just does help. It helps with standings, and it helps kind of legitimize the podcast when people come upon it. They see that it has good ratings and reviews, and might entice them to listen. Also, I have a new email address. It's steve@thingspolicec.com. So that's steve@thingspolicec.com. If you have any questions for me, any questions for the show, any suggestions for guests to come on, I'm getting a lot of those lately. I'm thankful for those. Anything at all, if you want to just reach out and shoot me a message, you can use that email. So thank you so much for checking out the podcast, and I will see you next time.